Why grocery stores deliberately stack brown eggs higher, the pricing psychology nobody sees. You've probably never stopped to think about where eggs actually live in the store. They're just there, on the shelf. But the placement of that carton, the height at which you find it, the way it catches your eye, all of that was engineered, and the engineering has almost nothing to do with what color the shell is. Most people assume brown eggs cost more because brown chickens are somehow more expensive to raise. That's the story we tell ourselves. But that's not what's really happening. The real story is about sightlines, about the space between your eye and the shelf, and about something psychologists call anchor pricing. And if you understand this, you'll start seeing it everywhere in the store, not just with eggs. Here's what I need you to do before we go further. If you've ever stood in front of an egg display and felt confused about why there were so many options, or if you've walked out wondering why you spent more than you expected, drop a comment below. I want to know which egg situation confused you most. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is the exact kind of thing we break down every week. The hidden logic behind choices you didn't even realize were being made for you. Wait, this is the part that matters most. The physical height at which a product sits on the shelf accounts for roughly 20 to 30% of its sales. That's not an exaggeration. Retailers have known this for decades. Eye level is buy level, as they say in the industry. But it's not just about being visible. It's about what happens in your brain when you reach. When a product sits at your natural eye level, you process it differently. Your hand doesn't have to move. Your arm stays relaxed. Your neck doesn't crane up or bend down. You see it, and something in your brain says, this is the default option. This is what I'm supposed to buy. Cognitive ease. That's the psychology. Easier to reach means easier to choose. Now, brown eggs at the top shelf, higher than white eggs, higher than mixed cartons, creates a very specific visual effect. You have to look up. Your eye travels upward to find them. And in that fraction of a second, something happens. Your brain registers effort. Reaching up feels deliberate. It feels like you're choosing the premium version, the one that requires extra effort. You're not just grabbing what's convenient, you're reaching for something special. The white eggs, meanwhile, sit lower, waist to mid-thigh height. You barely have to bend. You grab without thinking. And that's by design. Lower placement isn't for premium products. It's for commodity items, things you don't consciously choose. You just take them. But here's where grocery store logic gets clever, and frankly, this is the part that still bothers me. The store doesn't actually care which ones you pick. Both are profitable, but the height placement creates an illusion of difference. It makes brown eggs feel intentional. It makes white eggs feel like the automatic choice. Same product in some cases. Truly, some brown eggs come from the exact same farms as white eggs, just from different chicken breeds, but the shelf position sells a story about quality, about deliberation, about worth. Grocery chains test this obsessively. They move products up and down, they measure sales, they track how long customers linger, they watch eye movement. The data is unambiguous. Height changes sales volume by 20 to 30% without changing the price of the product itself, without changing anything except where your hand naturally falls. And because they've engineered your reach, they've engineered your sense of value. You reach up for the brown eggs. Your brain says, I'm choosing something better. The price reflects that choice. But the choice was already made the moment the store decided where to stack the carton. That's what we're really talking about here. Not chicken breeds, not cost of production, not even the flavor of the egg inside. We're talking about the distance between your eye and an object, and how that distance changes what you think you're choosing. There's a term used in retail architecture called the strike zone. It's borrowed from baseball, but it applies to every shelf in every store you've entered. The strike zone is the space between your shoulder and your eye level, roughly 28 to 66 inches off the ground for the average person. Items positioned there sell 30 to 40% more than identical products placed elsewhere, regardless of price. This isn't speculation. It comes from decades of point-of-sale data tracked by the major grocery chains. What makes this even more calculated is what happens at the extremes. The bottom shelf, what retailers call the dunce position, is reserved for the cheapest, least profitable items. The top shelf, just above comfortable reach, is where premium or specialty products live. Brown eggs occupy that top real estate. White eggs, the cheaper commodity option, usually sit at eye level or lower. So your eye sees the brown eggs first as premium, your hand confirms it by reaching, your wallet pays for what your body decided was worth more. The irony is nutritional. There is no chemical difference between a brown egg and a white egg. The USDA has confirmed this repeatedly. The only meaningful difference is the chicken breed that laid it. White eggs come from chickens with white feathers and white earlobes. Brown eggs come from chickens with red or brown feathers and red earlobes. That's it. The pigment goes on the shell, not into the yolk or the white. Taste identical. Nutrient profile identical. Price per ounce of protein, wildly different. The price gap widened starting in the 1980s, and it didn't happen because brown eggs were rarer or harder to produce. Before we continue, I need you to hold this timeline in mind. It matters to everything that follows. The brown egg premium is entirely a marketing artifact. It emerged because brown eggs simply looked more expensive. They looked homemade, rustic, farm fresh. And once that visual impression stuck in the public mind, the stores reinforced it through placement. Higher shelf space signaled premium. The price followed the signal. What happened next is where the psychology becomes genuinely clever. Farmers noticed the price difference and responded rationally. If consumers were willing to pay more for brown eggs, farmers would raise more brown egg-laying hens. Supply increased. But the price premium never collapsed. It stayed stubbornly high because, and this is the critical insight, the stores had already conditioned shoppers to perceive brown eggs as a superior category. The placement strategy had done the work. The visual hierarchy had done the work. The size of the carton, the packaging design, the shelf position, all of it reinforced a narrative that was completely disconnected from the egg's actual qualities. Stores continue this practice because they've learned something profound. Customers don't decide what's premium. The store decides it, and the customer's perception follows. The brown eggs sit higher. The customer's hand reaches higher. The register rings higher. And the customer leaves feeling that they chose something better, when in fact the choice was already authored by floor plan architecture and product placement. There's no deception involved. It's all perfectly transparent if you know what you're looking at. No false advertising. The label is honest. The eggs are real eggs. But the value signal is pure construction. This pattern repeats across the entire store. It's not unique to eggs. The most profitable items occupy the premium real estate. The most essential, lowest margin items sit where you have to bend or stretch. A grocery store isn't a neutral marketplace. It's engineered. Every inch of vertical space is allocated according to profit margins and psychological research about where the human eye naturally settles. Before we continue, I need to clarify something important. This isn't manipulation in the sense that most people imagine it. No store manager is sitting in a back office cackling about deceiving you. The system works because it aligns with how human attention actually functions. Your eyes don't land randomly on a shelf. Thousands of studies confirm this. The average shopper spends between 12 and 17 seconds in the egg section alone. In that window, your gaze follows a predictable path. It starts at approximately 55 to 60 inches from the ground, roughly shoulder height when you're standing upright. That's not accident. That's the sweet spot where retailers place their highest margin items across nearly every category. Cereal boxes occupy that exact zone. So do pasta sauces, energy drinks, premium yogurts, coffee. The items that cost more per unit, that offer higher profit to the store, they're positioned where your visual scan naturally lands first. Below that zone sits the budget tier. Above it, premium or specialty products. Bottom shelf, the one that requires you to crouch or bend. That's reserved for bulk items, loss leaders, and products with minimal margins. Stores accept lower profits on these items because they draw you into the store. Once you're inside, you're surrounded by the profitable stuff. The brown egg, though, presents a puzzle within this system. It should sit lower. Its margins are thinner. The supply cost is identical to white eggs for the farmer. Remember, that difference is breed and feed, not anything that changes profitability for the store significantly. But the brown egg occupies the premium shelf position, and stores have allowed it to command a premium price for decades. Why would they do that if it actually cost them nothing more to stock? The answer traces back to a specific moment in American food culture. In the 1970s, organic and natural food movements began gaining momentum. They were small at first, marginal, but they were growing. Consumers who read books about nutrition, who visited health food stores, who questioned industrial agriculture, these people were developing. They read labels, they asked questions, and they began associating brown eggs with farms, with natural production, with authenticity. The association wasn't invented by retailers, it emerged from consumer perception, but retailers recognized it immediately. Here was a visual marker, a color on a shell, that triggered an emotional response about naturalness and quality. Store managers didn't create that association. Consumers did. But once it existed, retailers capitalized on it. They stocked brown eggs higher. They charged more. They let the consumer's own assumption that brown eggs come from happier chickens, better farms, more natural conditions, do the work. The store wasn't lying. The brown egg was still an egg. But by positioning it prominently and pricing it higher, they signaled that it was premium. And the signal was so effective that generations of shoppers accepted it without question. This is where the pricing psychology becomes truly revealing. It's not about deception. It's about signal and interpretation. A brown egg doesn't cost the store more to acquire. The farmer receives roughly the same wholesale price for both colors, but the consumer has already agreed, through decades of cultural messaging, through magazine articles, through word of mouth, through the very architecture of the grocery store itself, that brown eggs are worth more. The store simply respects that agreement and profits from it. They're not creating demand, they're channeling it. On the farm, the distinction between these eggs is negligible from a production standpoint. A hen that lays brown eggs doesn't eat more feed than one that lays white eggs. She doesn't require special housing or treatment. The only real difference is genetics. The breed of bird determines shell color, nothing more. Yet by the time that egg reaches the supermarket shelf, it has acquired an entirely different economic identity. The transformation happens not in the coop, but in the mind of the customer walking the aisle. Here's something critical that changes how you should think about this entire arrangement. The visual association matters more than you realize. White eggs became synonymous with industrial efficiency. They come from Leghorn chickens, the breed engineered for maximum production at minimum cost. That efficiency is a genuine advantage. It means affordable protein for millions of people. But efficiency also implies something else to the consumer. It implies sterility. It implies factories. It implies a distance from nature. Brown eggs, by contrast, carry a different set of mental associations. They suggest heritage breeds, small farms, outdoor access, darker soil, warmer colors, better treatment of animals, higher nutritional value. None of these associations are automatically true. A brown egg from a factory farm contains the same nutrients as a white egg from the same facility. Yet the color itself triggers a narrative in the consumer's mind before they ever taste it or crack it open. Before we continue, I need you to hold something specific in mind. This pattern doesn't begin and end with eggs. You're about to see how this exact same mechanism operates across dozens of other products in that same store. Products you buy regularly without ever recognizing the design underneath. Bread offers a perfect example. White bread occupies the lower left portion of most bread displays. Whole wheat and multigrain breads occupy the premium positions. The cost difference between them, the actual ingredient cost, is minimal. Flour is flour. The wholesale price difference is negligible. Yet the retail markup on whole wheat bread is typically 15 to 20% higher than white bread. That gap exists because consumers have been conditioned to perceive whole wheat as healthier, more wholesome, more deliberate. The store isn't lying about the product. They're simply pricing it according to the value that consumers have agreed to assign to it. This mechanism repeats itself across pasta selections, cheese varieties, yogurt flavors, even water bottles. A bottle of mineral water will cost more than a bottle of filtered tap water, despite being chemically similar, sometimes identical. The label says mineral water. The bottle is slightly heavier. It might have a clearer appearance. These are signals. They allow the consumer to feel they're making an intentional choice, a more sophisticated choice, a choice that reflects their values. The grocery store, from this perspective, functions as a translation device. It takes raw agricultural products, colorless, flavorless, odorless at wholesale, and translates them into narratives: premium, natural, efficient, wholesome, sustainable, convenient. Each narrative carries a price. Each price reflects not the cost of production, but the cost of the story the consumer wants to believe about themselves while they're buying it. This is where the engineering meets human psychology in ways that most people never acknowledge. The store isn't just arranging products, it's arranging decisions, and those decisions happen in milliseconds, in the space between reaching and pulling back, between one price tag and another. Consider the physical placement of eggs themselves. A brown egg carton positioned at eye level, roughly 60 to 65 inches from the floor, is not there by accident. That's the height at which the human eye naturally settles when standing in front of a shelf. Neuroscience research has confirmed what grocery engineers figured out decades ago. Products at eye level sell 30 to 40% more than identical products on the shelf below or above. The brown eggs don't need to be more visible. They need to be the first thing you see, the most prominent, the assumed default. But here's where this gets more deliberate. The price difference between brown and white eggs isn't actually about supply scarcity anymore. Modern egg production is efficient enough that brown and white eggs cost farms nearly identical amounts to produce. The hens that lay brown eggs eat the same feed, live in the same conditions, and require the same labor as white egg layers. The only difference is genetics, a slight variation in the pigment deposited on the shell during formation. Yet customers consistently accept a 20 to 30% price premium for brown eggs. They do this because the visual is persuasive. The color itself carries associations: earthiness, naturalness, something less processed, something more real. A white egg, by contrast, looks industrial, clinical. It suggests factory farming, even when both eggs came from identical operations. Before we continue, I need you to think about something specific here. The store isn't lying to you. The brown egg is genuinely there. The price is genuinely higher. But the store is also not explaining that the premium has nothing to do with nutrition, quality, or the welfare of the chicken. It's choosing silence. And silence in the context of a price tag is its own form of persuasion. The store's designers understand something profound about how humans make decisions under time pressure. When you're walking through a grocery store, you have roughly 2 seconds to evaluate each decision. 2 seconds to notice the brown eggs are higher, 2 seconds to see the price, 2 seconds to make a judgment about whether the premium is worth it. In those 2 seconds, your brain doesn't run a nutritional analysis. It doesn't contact the farm to verify farming practices. It looks at the visual, compares it to the white eggs below, and thinks, that brown one must be better, it looks better. The vertical arrangement does something else too. It establishes a hierarchy. Brown eggs at eye level, white eggs lower. The lower shelf in grocery psychology is often understood as the budget shelf. The practical choice. The choice you make when you're not trying to impress anyone, not trying to signal anything about your values or your income. Eyes don't drift down as naturally as they drift across. There's a slight sense of reaching down, of settling, of compromise. This stacking strategy has been tested extensively in real stores over actual decades. Retailers know precisely what happens when they move brown eggs to a lower shelf and white eggs to eye level. Sales flip almost immediately. White egg sales increase. Brown egg sales drop. The product hasn't changed. The nutrition hasn't changed. The only variable is position, is visibility, is the story the shelf is telling about which egg is the normal choice and which is the economy choice. Frankly, this is the part that troubles me most about modern grocery design. It's not deceptive in any legal sense, but it's not transparent either. A customer could walk out of a store having spent an extra $5 on brown eggs every week for a year, an extra $260 annually, without ever knowing that the premium was entirely psychological, entirely rooted in visual persuasion rather than any material difference in the product itself. That $260, multiply it across a typical American household that shops weekly, then multiply across an entire supermarket chain with hundreds of locations, then across an entire country. The cumulative effect of shelf positioning decisions becomes genuinely staggering. Major grocery retailers employ entire departments dedicated to planogram optimization. A planogram is essentially a blueprint for shelf arrangement. It dictates not just what products go where, but the precise number of facings, the number of individual packages visible at once, for each item. It's designed in corporate offices by specialists who have never met the customers they're influencing. Before we continue, I need you to understand something fundamental about how retail psychology operates at scale. This isn't about one brown egg versus one white egg. This is about architecture. It's about designing an entire visual environment that nudges millions of decisions in a predetermined direction every single day. The positioning decision matters so much that retailers will sometimes intentionally create artificial scarcity to reinforce perceived value. A brown egg shelf will be deliberately kept slightly less full than a white egg shelf. Customers unconsciously interpret lower inventory as higher demand. Higher demand signals desirability. Desirability justifies a premium price. Some grocery chains have tested a different approach. They position the cheapest eggs, usually white or cage-free white, at absolute eye level, but they surround them with slightly taller packaging from brown and specialty egg brands. This creates a visual effect where the brown eggs appear to frame and elevate the white eggs, making white eggs look like the safest, most popular choice by sheer volume of visual presence. The actual sorting and packaging happens in facilities that most consumers will never see. A brown egg-laying facility and a white egg-laying facility operate almost identically. The birds are treated the same. The feed is the same. The water systems are the same. The only meaningful difference is the genetics of the bird. Rhode Island Reds, Plymouth Rocks, and similar heritage breeds produce brown eggs. Leghorns produce white eggs. That's it. Yet by the time those eggs reach the retail display, they've been assigned completely different narratives. Brown eggs are positioned as premium, natural, better. White eggs are positioned as standard, basic, sufficient. The egg itself hasn't changed. The story has. A consumer holding a brown egg in their hand feels they've made a superior choice. They're more likely to remember that egg positively. They're more likely to choose that brand again. They're more likely to recommend it to friends. All of this stems entirely from color perception and shelf positioning, not from any actual difference in nutritional value or quality. Retailers understand this chain of psychology intimately. They've measured it, they've tested it, they've optimized it. The shelf you walk past in your local grocery store this week wasn't arranged randomly. It was designed, deliberately, specifically to guide your hand toward the more expensive option. That's the mechanism. That's how pricing psychology operates in physical retail space. It's not about lying to customers. It's about controlling what customers see first, what they notice longest, and what feels most natural to reach for when they're tired from work and just need to grab some eggs. Now, this is the secret I promised you at the beginning of this video. The reason grocery stores stack brown eggs higher isn't really about the eggs themselves at all. It's about the space between what you see and what you decide to buy. That space is engineered, designed, tested across thousands of store layouts until retailers found the exact height, the exact angle, the exact surrounding color that makes your brain skip past rational thought and reach upward. Behavioral economists call this choice architecture, but that phrase is too clinical for what's actually happening. You're not being tricked in any malicious sense, you're being guided. The same way a highway engineer positions a curve to slow traffic without a single warning sign. The same way a kitchen designer angles a countertop so you naturally stand in the most ergonomic spot. Retailers have simply applied those same principles to the shelf itself. What makes this particularly clever is that nothing about it feels deceptive once you understand it. A brown egg and a white egg, sitting side by side, are chemically identical inside the shell. The yolk color depends on the hen's diet. The white is protein and water in both cases. Nutritionally, they're interchangeable. Yet the brown egg will sell for more. It will be stacked more prominently. It will be purchased more confidently. And the customer will feel satisfied with that choice. That satisfaction matters. It's not frivolous. When you buy something you believe is better, you actually experience it as better. You'll taste it differently. You'll remember the meal more positively. You'll associate that brand with quality. That psychological shift is real. It changes behavior. It changes loyalty. It changes what you buy next week. The genius of the stacking strategy is that it works without requiring any false claims. No label needs to say, brown eggs are superior. No marketing copy needs to mislead. The shelf itself does the communicating. Height implies importance. Prominence implies value. Your brain processes these cues in milliseconds, faster than conscious thought, and reaches the same conclusion. The brown eggs deserve the higher price because they're positioned higher. Retailers know that most customers spend less than 4 seconds looking at any single shelf. In that time frame, you won't consciously evaluate every option. You won't compare prices methodically. You won't think about the nutritional data. You'll recognize color, notice what's at your eye level, and make a choice based on what feels right. The brown eggs feel right because they're positioned to feel right. This applies far beyond eggs. The same principles control where you find olive oil, where cereal sits in relation to your children's eye level, how milk is positioned at the back of the store so you walk through more aisles. Every placement is strategic. Every height is intentional. Every distance from the entrance has been calculated to maximize the likelihood that you'll make a specific purchasing decision. Understanding this changes how you move through a grocery store. Not in a paranoid way, just in a more aware way. You start to notice when you're making choices based on information. And when you're making choices based on positioning, you recognize that your impulse to grab something at eye level isn't entirely your impulse. It's been invited. The practical takeaway is simple. Next time you're buying eggs, or milk, or cereal, or anything that comes in multiple variants, pause for a full 5 seconds. Look at what's at eye level. Look at what's below. Look at what requires you to reach up or crouch down. Then ask yourself, would I choose this if it weren't positioned exactly here? That single question puts you back in control of your own decision. It reminds you that you're not just shopping, you're navigating a carefully designed environment where every choice, even the ones that feel natural, has been anticipated. Retailers will keep stacking eggs the way they do. They should. It's efficient. It works. But now you know why it works. And knowing that is the difference between being guided and being deliberately unaware. Thank you for watching. If you found yourself thinking differently about something you see every single day, I'd love to know what it is. Drop a comment below. And if this is the kind of explanation you're looking for, please subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss the next one.